Welcome back to the Loose Nut Printing channel. On this video, as you can see, we got something a little out of the norm. This is a project I've been doing for a while. So let's get into it. The first thing we're going to be doing is building a battery and electronic tray for inside the cab. So we're going to have to figure out our spatial limitations with this, and we can try to do everything in CAD, but the real world isn't perfect, so it's always best to find out how far off from perfect we are when doing these projects. So it's best to do up, I'm doing here, a small little template or test jig, I should call it, that will slip onto the frame and just see if what we're working with from CAD is well enough to correlate over to the real world. So we're just going to make a couple of small little cross braces and then a couple across to attach them to give our horizontal correlation, and just like that. So now with those all done, we can add a small hole for an M3 screw to allow it to just simply pin it together. And with the holes added, I'm not going to bore you and make you watch me add holes to all the corners. We can just simply throw them into our Persia slicers, slice them up, throw them onto our camera, and print them. Now with them printed, we can see that this is what we're working with, is just a little lid to temporary work. With the lid out of the way, now we can actually get the brace in to see if our CAD drawing is close, or we should say close, if the real world is close to the CAD drawing, and it looking like it's actually not too bad. We do have some room left to right to play with, so now knowing that what we're working with in CAD is going to be good enough for the real world, or vice versa. Keep doing that. Now we can just start getting our plate all done. So we can simply get our test jig out of the way and extrude a plate, or draw out a plate and extrude it to the size we need it. Now we're just going to simply split the plate in half. So no reason to actually do all the corners. If I was doing this on an equal part, like all edges were a square, I just do one corner and then the top mirrored all over. But since the top and bottom are on a slight angle, I'm just going to do the top and bottom ones, and then just take a copy of the top skin, flip it over to the proper side I need it to be, drag it over, pin it to the bottom, and takes a couple of shots here to get it lined up just the way I want it to be lined. And second time's always good. Now with corners rounded off, we can add a little bit of a perimeter wall to it. I added a 2mm wall to the whole thing and made the thing about 8mm tall, just to hold in the electronics and stuff. They do bounce loose. Everything's going to be firmly two-sided tape down. I've always used two-sided tape and not had much issue. Now I drew up a little temp battery that's roughly the right size and size I should say, and with the wire sticking off the end just to make sure it will fit. Then I added the receiver or ESC in just to get an idea what it's going to look like. You can get an idea with CAD, but you can never get a true understanding until it's actually in the real world. So I figured, since I had enough room, I was going to trim off the back of the battery box or electronic tray a little bit, so I had a little bit more room for the cab to swing up, as you've seen in the testing the jig, that the whole cab kicks forward. So now I'm just going to add a couple little tabs on the corners of the battery, what is going to be essentially the battery box or battery location. Just a couple little tabs to help prevent the battery from sliding down or forward, and then I'm going to have a couple of holes in the bottom of it to allow some Velcro straps. Now with most of the features on the electronic tray, we can get the mounting holes for the mounting tray put onto this part. One thing I didn't think of while doing this part I should have done was make a template bracket that clicks onto the frame like I've done for everything else. One thing that kind of slipped my mind, you'll see the results of that clerical error here in a little bit. Small things. Oh well. One thing you're seeing me do here is actually countersink the screws, so then they're not going to be something that's going to get in the way of when you go and mount in the electronics. This project, I am planning on releasing it to the public once it's done. Here's the time lapse I got for the part tray. Not the greatest. The first one didn't even work. So here's the part tray. And now with it popped off, you can see there's a few additions I didn't record. One's there, you'll see in I'll explain here in a second. Now with the part tray mounted, I just got it mounted with 2 screws in each corner. You can get an idea how the ESC and receiver is on a mount. So the holes that I added are for the M3 brass inserts to add a second layer, and for the light kit to lay in the bottom. The ESC and the receiver actually don't get moved to the second layer once I can get the light kit acquired. Still wondering if I should order it off PCBWay and get them to build it, or just do it myself since it is an open source light kit. So now the next part I'm going to design here for this project is what these would be on the actual truck. Would be a simulated they would be the battery box, but they're going to be simulated for this. So I'm just don't really have any specs for them. I'm just going off of what looks good and what seems like it's proper. I do have a WPL 1/16 deuce and a half pickup, or military truck I should say. That's what this is. The cab is a M35 deuce and a half I'm building this from, and I'm using, like I said, my WPL as a rough idea of everything. So I'm just going off what looks good and what's on the WPL, a few photos, and just eyeballing it and seeing what I like. That's the big thing about this project. It's not really supposed to be a M35 deuce and a half per se. It's supposed to be a bush rescue truck once it's all said and done. So get back to the parts here. These, I'm adding some brass inserts into the back here. The brass inserts to help stabilize. And then I didn't record it. I was still recording. I added some bottom angle parts to mount to the frame also to help give it more stability. Because I was thinking of it just 2 screws through the side of the frame on the back. If I land on something, these things aren't going to last. So now with the box done, we can actually get a time lapse. And this one actually, I finally got the settings right, and this one came out really nice. But this is it. This is all for this week. We'll see you next week, and we'll get these mounted up. Thanks for watching, and have a good one.